The high Arizona desert was a furnace, but inside the cockpit of her A-10 Thunderbolt, Captain Eva Rostova was ice. Her call sign was Valkyrie, and she was the only woman in the 355th Fighter Squadron. She didn't just fly the Warthog, she loved it. She loved its stubborn strength, its lack of grace. The plane was built around a giant cannon, a flying tank designed to protect troops on the ground. It was an honest plane, and Eva Rostova was an honest pilot. This, she was learning, was a problem. She banked the heavy aircraft, her eyes scanning the dusty brown landscape below. Today was a training exercise, a red flag simulation. Eva was Angel Flight, providing close air support for a ground team. Her wingman, Lieutenant Chad Chaser Jensen, was young, cocky, and Colonel Thorne's favorite. He flew hot and fast, treating the training like a movie. Angel Flight, this is ground team. We are pinned down, grid 29er Tango. A voice crackled in her ear. Angel 1 copies, Eva said, her voice calm. I have eyes on the target. A-10-11 is inbound. She pushed the stick forward and the Warthog dove. She lined up her sights on the mock-up of an enemy bunker. Her thumb hovered over the trigger. Chaser, stay high, cover my 6. Roger that, Valkyrie, Jensen's voice chirped. Don't want you to scuff your nails. Eva ignored him. She had heard it all, the jokes, the whispers, the outright scorn. She was 5'7" with dark hair pulled into a tight bun. She was not a large woman, but she was made of steel cable and quiet resolve. She didn't drink with the boys. She didn't laugh at their crude jokes. She just studied. She studied flight manuals, enemy tactics, and aircraft maintenance. She could field strip her Warthog's cannon faster than most of her ground crew. This made the other pilots uneasy. It made their commander, Colonel Marcus Thorne, openly hostile. Thorne was a man carved from old, hard wood. He believed fighter pilots should look like him, tall, loud, and male. He saw Eva Rostova as a political project, an experiment forced on him by generals in Washington. He was waiting for her to fail. Target acquired, Eva murmured. She pressed the trigger. The A-10's GAU-8 Avenger cannon let out a pretend BRRRT over the training frequency, a perfect hit. Good hits. Chaser, your turn. Target is the convoy grid 30 Alpha. Wilco lead, Jensen said. He dove, but he came in too sharp, too fast. He was showing off. Chaser, your angle is off. Pull up, you're too low, Eva commanded. I got this, Valkyrie, just watch, he snapped. He fired, his hits spraying wide, missing the target entirely. In his rush, he had put himself in a dangerous position. A simulated surface-to-air missile site locked onto him. Chaser, Sam Locke, break right, Eva yelled. He panicked. He broke left, directly into Eva's flight path. Eva had 1/10 of a second to react. If this were real, they would both be dead. She jammed the stick hard over, pulling the heavy plane into a gut-wrenching turn that pushed her deep into her seat. The G-force hammered her. She flew dangerously low, her wingtip just feet above a rocky spire to avoid a collision. The simulation ended. The radio was silent. Back at the base, the debriefing room was cold. Colonel Thorne stood in front of a large screen, his arms crossed. The screen showed the flight data. It showed Jensen's reckless approach. It showed his panic. And it showed Eva's last-second, life-saving maneuver. Thorne's eyes were like chips of flint. He looked past Jensen. He looked directly at Eva. Captain Rostova, he said, his voice quiet and deadly. You broke protocol today. You flew below the designated hard deck. You endangered a billion-dollar aircraft. Eva stood straight. Sir, Lieutenant Jensen was on a collision course. I had to evade. You had to evade, Thorne sneered. Or were you hot-dogging, showing off for the ground crew? Lieutenant Jensen made a minor error. You, Captain, showed a complete lack of situational awareness and a reckless disregard for the rules of engagement. The room was silent. Jensen looked down at his boots, a small smirk on his face. He was not going to defend her. He was going to let her take the fall. Sir, with all due respect, the data shows. I am not interested in your respect or your data, Captain, Thorne cut her off. I am interested in discipline. You are a liability. Your temperament is not suited for high-stress combat. You think you're better than my other pilots, and that makes you dangerous. He took a breath, letting his words hang in the air. You are grounded, effective immediately. You will not fly. You will not even touch an aircraft until a full review of your conduct is complete. Eva felt the blood drain from her face. Grounded, it was a pilot's worst nightmare. It was a stain on her record that would never wash out. Sir, she said, her voice a whisper, please don't. Dismissed, Thorne said, turning his back to her. Eva stood there for a moment, the eyes of every other pilot on her. They looked at her with pity, with scorn, with a cold, better-you-than-me relief. She turned, her back rigid, and walked out of the room. She walked through the hangar, past the planes she loved. She walked past her ground crew chief, Master Sergeant Sarge Rodriguez. Sarge was an older man with grease under his fingernails and kind eyes. He had been working on planes since before Eva was born. He saw her face. "Captain, what's wrong?" Eva didn't stop. She couldn't speak. If she spoke, she would break, and she would not break. Not here, not in front of them. She got to her small, plain quarters. She locked the door. She sat on the edge of her bed and looked at a small, faded photograph on her nightstand. It was her father standing next to his F-4 Phantom jet. He had been a pilot. He had taught her to fly. He had taught her to be strong. She did not cry. She just sat there as the Arizona sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The sounds of jets taking off and landing filled the air. They were her sounds, and she had been locked out. Colonel Thorne had been waiting for this. He had used Jensen's mistake as an excuse. He wanted her gone. He was painting her as unstable, as a rogue. She knew deep in her bones that this was not just about a training exercise. This was a warning, and she knew that Colonel Thorne was not finished with her yet. She was right. 2 hours later, a loud knock echoed on her door. It was a young airman. "Captain Rostova, Colonel Thorne wants you in the command center, now." A cold dread filled her. Why would he call for her? She was grounded. She walked into the dimly lit command center. The mood was not tense, it was funereal. A large map of a remote, mountainous region glowed on the main screen. Thorne was there, along with his top aides. He didn't look at her. "We have a situation," Thorne said to the room. "A Special Forces team, callsign Hammer, is trapped. They were on a classified reconnaissance mission and got compromised. They are surrounded, taking heavy fire, and a massive weather front is moving in. The worst storm of the decade." He pointed to a swirling mass of red and green on the weather map. "The storm is already on them. We can't get any high-altitude assets in. No drones, no F-16s. The valley they're in is too narrow, and the cloud cover is down to the ground. It's a zero-visibility nightmare." An aide spoke up. "Sir, we can't risk a plane. It's a suicide mission. The enemy has active anti-aircraft guns. We can't even see them." "I know that, Major," Thorne snapped. He finally turned his gaze to Eva. His eyes were cold and empty. He had a look of grim satisfaction. "It is a suicide mission. We cannot risk our best pilots or our top-line aircraft." He paused. The room was deathly quiet. Then he said, "However, Captain Rostova is available. Her plane, the Hog, is already fueled from this morning's exercise. It's an older bird, practically a write-off." Eva finally understood. This was not a rescue. This was an execution. He was giving her an order he knew would kill her. If she refused, she would be court-martialed for disobeying a direct order in a combat situation. Her career would be over. If she accepted, she would fly into a meat grinder. A storm, mountains, and anti-aircraft guns, all alone, in a plane Thorne knew was past its prime. "Captain," Thorne said, a sick, slight smile on his lips. "This is your chance, a shot at redemption. Prove you're not the liability I think you are. Go in, save Hammer team, and fly out. Simple as that." Eva looked at the map. She saw the storm. She saw the enemy positions. She knew the odds. They were not low. They were zero. She looked at Thorne. She saw the hatred in his eyes. He wanted her to die. He wanted to tell the review board that she had tragically crashed due to her own reckless nature. He would be rid of her, and he would be a hero for at least trying to save Hammer team. Eva Rostova took a deep breath. She thought of her father. She thought of the men trapped on that mountain. They didn't deserve to die because a colonel hated her. "I'll go," she said. Her voice did not tremble. Thorne's smile widened. "I thought you might get to your aircraft." As Eva walked out, she heard Thorne speak to his aide, just loud enough for her to hear. "Major, you can mark Captain Rostova off the duty roster. Permanently. We won't be seeing her again." The flight line was a ghost town. The impending storm had sent most crews scrambling to secure their aircraft. The wind was already picking up, howling across the runway with a low, mournful sound. It kicked up sand that stung Eva's face as she walked toward the hangar. Her A-10, number 770264, sat under the yellow hangar lights. She was an old plane. The green paint was faded and chipped. Her nose art, a charging warthog, was barely visible. But Eva loved this plane. She called her Old Bess. Master Sergeant Sarge Rodriguez was waiting for her. He was the only one there. He was holding a heavy toolkit, his face a mask of worry. "Captain," he said, his voice rough. "They told me you were coming. They told me what he's making you do." "I have my orders, Sarge," Eva said, pulling on her G-suit. Her movements were mechanical, precise. "Eva, listen to me," Sarge said, dropping the formal captain. He rarely did that. "You can't take this bird, she's not ready. I've been fighting with the supply chain for weeks. That hydraulic leak we patched last week, it's back, and the #2 engine. It's been running rough, it's sluggish on the uptake. She won't have the power you need if you get into trouble." "Is she fueled? Is she armed?" Eva asked, ignoring his warning. "Yes, she's fully loaded from this morning, but Eva, this is not a plane for a storm. This is a plane for a boneyard. Thorne knows this. He's sending you up in a broken machine. It's a setup." "I know," Eva said quietly, strapping the survival vest over her suit. Sarge stopped. He looked at her, really looked at her. He had seen hundreds of pilots, scared ones, brave ones, foolish ones. He had never seen this. This cold, quiet fire. She was not scared. She was not reckless. She was resolved. "The men on that mountain, Sarge, they don't care if my engine is sluggish. They just care that someone is coming. You'd go if you were me." Sarge stared at her for a long moment. He nodded slowly, his throat tight. "Yes, ma'am, I suppose I would." He sighed, then slapped the side of the A-10's fuselage. "All right, old Bess, you're going to have to hold together for one more dance. You hear me? You bring my pilot home." He turned back to Eva. "The storm is moving faster than they thought. You've got a 90-minute flight to the target zone. By the time you get there, it'll be hell." "Understood," Eva said. She began her walk-around inspection, her flashlight beam cutting through the dark. She was meticulous. She ran her hand over the patched hydraulic line Sarge had mentioned. It was damp with fluid, a fresh leak. She stopped. This was bad, very bad. In a storm in the mountains, sluggish controls were a death sentence. She could refuse the plane, she would be within her rights, but Thorne would spin it. He would say she lost her nerve. He would ruin her, and those men would die. She made a choice. She would rather die trying than live as a coward. "It'll hold," she said, mostly to herself. "Like hell it will," Sarge muttered. He ran back to his toolbox, grabbed a heavy wrench, and gave the fitting one last, desperate tightening. Fluid squirted out, then slowed to a drip. "That's all I can do, Captain. It's a prayer, not a fix." "A prayer is good, Sarge, thank you." She climbed the ladder into the cockpit. The titanium bathtub, they called it, the armored shell that protected the pilot. She strapped herself in, the 5-point harness clicking into place. She began flipping switches. The cockpit lights glowed green and amber. The twin engines whined, then roared to life. The whole plane shivered. She put on her helmet and visor. The world went quiet, filtered through the hum of the electronics. "Tower, this is Valkyrie 11, requesting permission to taxi." The radio crackled. "Valkyrie 11, you are cleared to taxi. Wind is 220 at 30 knots. Godspeed, Captain." The plane rolled onto the dark runway. The wind buffeted it, trying to push it off course. Eva fought the rudder pedals. Through her canopy, she saw Colonel Thorne's black car parked just off the tarmac. He was watching. He was making sure she left. Eva looked at the car. "You want me gone, Colonel," she whispered. "You'll have to try harder." She pushed the throttles to the firewall. The two engines screamed. The sluggish #2 engine, just as Sarge had warned, took an extra second to catch up. The plane accelerated, heavy with fuel and weapons. "Valkyrie is rolling," she said. She pulled back on the stick. The Warthog, loaded and wounded, fought against gravity. It lifted off the runway, climbing slowly into the black, churning clouds. The moment she was airborne, the storm hit her. It was not turbulence, it was a physical assault. The A-10 was thrown up and down hundreds of feet at a time. Rain and ice hammered the canopy. Alarms blared. "Ice, ice, ice," the automated voice warned. "I know," Eva gritted, fighting the controls. The plane was already trying to stall. She diverted power to the anti-icing systems. She was flying blind. Her radar was useless in the storm. Her navigation was based on her GPS and a map on her knee. She was alone in a metal box inside a hurricane. For an hour she fought. She did not fight the enemy, she fought the sky. Her arms ached from wrestling the stick. The plane creaked and groaned around her. It was a sound she had never heard an A-10 make. Then her radio, which had been silent, crackled. It was a weak signal. "Any Angel, this is Hammer, taking, heavy, need, evac." The voice was cut off by static. "Hammer, this is Valkyrie 11. Eva shouted into her mask. I read you barely. Talk to me. What's your status? Another burst of static. Then a new voice, deeper, calmer. Valkyrie! This is Hammer Actual. We are on a ridge grid. Static. 9-0, pinned down. They have mortars. We have multiple wounded. We can't hold the storm. They're using it to move in on us. I'm close, Hammer. 10 minutes out. I need you to mark your position. Negative, Valkyrie. You can't come in. The cloud ceiling is. It's on the ground. You'll hit the mountain. Anti-aircraft guns are active all over this valley. It's a death trap. Turn around. That's an order, Angel. Eva looked at her instruments. The man was right. Her altimeter was screaming at her. The mountain peaks were all around her, hidden in the black. Hammer Actual, I am a warthog. I don't do high altitude, Eva said. Her voice was steady. I am coming down. Valkyrie, no, it's suicide. Get your heads down, Hammer. I'm coming in hot. Eva Rostova pushed the stick forward. She aimed her plane at the solid black ground. She was diving, blind, into a valley of death. She was trusting her GPS, her map, and the desperate hope that she would break through the clouds above the valley floor. The plane screamed, the wind howled. Her ground proximity warning system went insane. Pull up, pull up, pull up. She ignored it. 5,000 feet, she murmured. 4,003. The SF team leader was shouting, Mayday, Mayday, Valkyrie, pull up. At 2,000 feet, the A-10 burst through the bottom of the clouds. Eva's blood ran cold. It was not a valley, it was a canyon. The walls were sheer rock, barely a mile wide, and below her a nightmare. The ridge was lit by muzzle flashes. The Special Forces team, maybe a dozen men, were behind a small cluster of rocks. Below them, scores of enemy fighters were climbing the hill. Mortars were raining down. And across the canyon, nestled in the cliffs, were the anti-aircraft guns. Green tracers, like angry green fireflies, were already snaking their way up toward her. She had flown into the very center of the hornet's nest. Valkyrie 1-1, I see you, the SF leader yelled, a note of pure disbelief in his voice. She's here, she's really here. Hammer, I see the bad guys, Eva said, her voice impossibly calm. The patch Sarge had put on her hydraulics. It was failing. She could feel the controls getting heavy, like they were stuck in wet cement. The right engine, the sluggish one, sputtered as she banked hard. An alarm blared, a missile lock. They've got me painted, she yelled. She jammed her thumb on the flare dispenser. A stream of bright fire shot out from the back of her plane. The missile streaked past, missing her by yards, but the tracers were finding their mark. Clang, clang, clang. Bullets the size of milk bottles hammered her left wing. The plane shuddered violently. Left wing hit, she grunted. Controls are sluggish, Sarge, you were right. But she was lined up. The enemy fighters were swarming the ridge. She had one pass. She squeezed the trigger. The world was swallowed by a sound. The BRRRT of the A-10's cannon is not a sound. It is a physical force. It is the sound of thunder tearing the sky apart. A stream of 30mm bullets, each one a small explosion, ripped into the mountainside. The enemy line vanished. They were not men anymore, they were pink mist. Good hits, yelled the SF leader. Oh my God, good hits. But Eva was in trouble. The sluggish controls, the leaking hydraulics, she couldn't pull up fast enough. She was heading straight for the canyon wall. Eva Rostova hauled back on the stick with all her strength. The plane did not respond. The hydraulic fluid, the lifeblood of the aircraft's muscles, was bleeding out. The controls were stiff, almost frozen. The granite wall of the canyon filled her entire view. Pull up, Valkyrie, pull up, the SF leader screamed over the radio. I'm trying, she grunted. She stomped on the right rudder pedal, a desperate last-ditch maneuver. She was trying to skid the plane to force it to turn. The A-10 shuddered, one wing dipping dangerously. It felt like it was going to fall out of the sky. But it worked. The plane's nose veered just enough. Her left wingtip, the one already damaged, scraped against the rock face. A horrific shriek of tearing metal filled the cockpit. The plane was thrown into a violent spin. Eva was tumbling end over end, trapped between the narrow canyon walls. She was disoriented. Up was down. The G-forces were trying to pull her from her seat. She fought her instincts. A pilot's instinct is to pull back. She pushed forward, forcing the nose down, using the one good engine to try and power out of the spin. For a second, the plane stabilized. She was flying again, but she was in deep trouble. Valkyrie status, Hammer Actual yelled. I'm still here, Eva panted. Left wing is shredded. I've lost most of my hydraulics. Get out of here, Valkyrie. You did it. They're in chaos. Get out. Negative, Hammer, Eva said. She looked across the canyon, the anti-aircraft guns. They were still there, and they were angry. They were firing at her, but their tracers were landing dangerously close to the SF team's position. I'm not leaving you in this hornet's nest. I have to take out those guns. That's suicide. You're barely flying. Just tell me where they are. 2 of them, cliff face. 9 o'clock, you can't miss them. Roger, Valkyrie is coming back around. She tried to turn, the plane moaned. She could only make wide, slow turns to the right, using her one good engine. She had to fly all the way out of the canyon, turn and come back in, a sitting duck. As she flew out, she saw the second wave of enemy fighters, the ones who had been held in reserve. They were now climbing toward the SF team, seeing how wounded her plane was. They're coming again, Hammer yelled, dozens of them. Hold on, Eva said. She had 1 card left to play. She had her rockets. She flew back into the mouth of the canyon. The 2 gun emplacements opened up on her immediately. Green tracers filled the sky. This time, she didn't dodge. She couldn't. She just flew straight at them. The cockpit lit up with alarms. Warning! Warning! Bullets hammered the titanium bathtub around her. It sounded like giants were hitting her with sledgehammers. Clang, thump, clang. She was 50 feet from the cliff. She fired a salvo of rockets. The Zuni rockets streaked from her wings and slammed into the first gun emplacement. The world turned white. The explosion was massive. But the second gun was still firing. It was aiming right at her. A volley of shells hit her right engine, the sluggish engine. It didn't sputter, it exploded. A massive bang rocked the A-10. The cockpit filled with black smoke. The fire extinguisher system kicked in, but it was too late. The engine was gone. A massive, gaping hole was torn in the side of her plane. I'm hit. Right engine is on fire, it's out. She was 1,000 feet in the air, in a narrow canyon with only 1 engine, no hydraulics, and a shredded left wing. The plane was dying. It was falling. Valkyrie, eject, eject, the SF leader screamed. Eva looked down. If she ejected, her plane, full of fuel and rockets, would crash directly into the SF team's position. It would kill them all. She made her choice. Negative, I'm staying. She was going to crash, but she was going to choose where. She pointed her dying plane at the last anti-aircraft gun. She was going to use her A-10 as a missile. Get your heads down, Hammer, she whispered. Her thumb was on the trigger for the cannon. She had one last burst. The gunner on the ground saw her coming. He saw the fire, the smoke, the dead engine. He saw the angel of death coming for him. He and his crew panicked. They abandoned their gun and ran. At the last second, Eva used the last bit of hydraulic pressure, the last ounce of her strength, and pulled the stick. The plane responded just barely. It cleared the gun emplacement by inches. It slammed, belly first, into the mountainside behind the gun. But she wasn't done. As she scraped the ground, she fired. B-R-R-R-R-R-R-R-R-R-T. The last, long, defiant roar of the warthog. The cannon, pointed sideways, ripped the gun emplacement to shreds. Then silence. The SF team stared. The canyon was quiet. The A-10 was a wreck on the mountainside, its one good engine silent, the other a smoking ruin. The enemy was dead or running. Valkyrie, the SF leader whispered. Valkyrie, talk to me. Eva, talk to me. Static. Valkyrie, do you read? More static. The team leader, a tough-as-nails captain, bowed his head. God rest her soul, she saved us all. Back at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, it was 3 a.m. The storm was at its peak. Colonel Thorne was in his office, drinking coffee, looking at the clock. Captain Rostova's fuel would have run out an hour ago. She was officially lost. He was already drafting the killed in action report. He wrote about her bravery and her reckless spirit. He painted himself as the commander who had given her a chance at redemption, a chance she had failed to take. It was perfect. The command center was quiet. The radio operator, a young airman, was staring at his console, listening to the static. Then he heard it, faint, almost impossible. A voice. A mayday, mayday. The operator sat up. Sir, I think I have something. This is Valkyrie. 1-1 IM, inbound, IM's on fire. The command center exploded. Men were shouting. It's her, it's Rostova, she's alive. Thorne dropped his coffee mug. It shattered on the floor. He ran from his office. "What? That's impossible," she crashed. He burst into the command center. "What is this?" The operator turned up the volume. Eva's voice, strained and gasping, filled the room. "Tower, this is Valkyrie 1-1. I have sustained heavy damage. Left wing is compromised. Right engine is gone. I am on fire. My hydraulics are 0. I have wounded." "Wounded?" Thorne yelled. "What is she talking about?" Then the operator's face went pale. "Sir, I'm picking up a second signal from her plane." "Two." A new voice came over the radio, weak but clear. "This is Hammer Actual. I am on board Valkyrie 1-1. She landed. She landed on the mountain. She put the fire out. She saved us." The room was in stunned silence. Thorne was white. "What?" The SF leader continued. We patched her up, but we have a critically wounded man. He won't make it. Without surgery. She said she could fly. She put him in the ammo bay. She took me to help." Thorne couldn't believe it. She hadn't just survived. She had crashed, put out the fire, loaded 2 Special Forces soldiers into her single-seat attack jet, and then taken off again from a mountainside. In a storm, on one engine. "She's a ghost," someone whispered. "Valkyrie 1-1, the tower operator said, his voice shaking. We read you. We are scrambling the fire trucks. What is your status?" A long, painful pause. "My landing gear is gone," Eva's voice said. "It was torn off in the crash. I have no gear, tower, and I'm losing the last engine. It's quitting. I'm gliding." She was coming in dead stick. A burning, broken glider with no wheels carrying 3 people. "Clear the runway," Thorne screamed. "Clear the base. She's going to crash." "Negative, tower." Eva's voice cut through the panic. She was close now. They could hear the whine of her one dying engine. "I am not going to crash." Through the driving rain, the tower controllers saw it. It was not a plane, it was a comet, a shape of fire and smoke falling from the sky. "I am putting her down," Eva said. "Right on the numbers." Bass sirens wailed, a piercing scream that cut through the howl of the storm. Red and yellow lights from the fire trucks and ambulances painted the wet tarmac. Everyone who was not essential had been ordered to take cover, but no one did. Pilots, maintenance crews, and administrative staff. They lined the edge of the flight line, soaked to the bone by the rain, their faces turned to the sky. They were watching the impossible. Colonel Thorne stood on the tower balcony, his knuckles white as he gripped the railing. He was watching his career, his reputation, and his freedom fall out of the sky. "She's going to hit the tower," he whispered, his voice trembling. "She's out of control." But she wasn't. The burning A-10, Old Bess, was not tumbling. She was descending heavy and slow like a wounded eagle. Eva was using the last of her altitude to line up with the main runway. She had no engine power. She had no landing gear. She had no hydraulics. She was flying a 30,000-pound brick. "Valkyrie 1-1, you are cleared for any landing you can walk away from," the tower operator said. His voice was thick with emotion. "Roger, tower," Eva's voice crackled. It was weak. "I'm coming in. Tell the fire crews. Tell them to aim for the fuselage. I have passengers." This news rippled through the crowd. Passengers in an A-10, it was unheard of. The Warthog passed over the runway threshold. It was too low, too slow. It was going to stall. She's stalling," a young pilot in the crowd yelled. But at the last second, Eva did something. She forced the plane's nose down, gaining a final burst of speed. She was using the stall. She was forcing the plane onto the ground. The belly of the Warthog hit the concrete. The sound was not a crash. It was a shriek. The sound of a mountain being dragged across the earth. A tidal wave of sparks, bright orange and white, erupted from the plane, illuminating the entire base. The Warthog, a 300-foot-long comet of fire and grinding metal, slid down the runway. It spun, turning sideways. The shredded left wing dug into the concrete, snapping off completely. The plane, now just a cockpit and a burning engine, continued to spin out of control. It was heading for a line of parked fuel tankers. "No, no, no," Sarge Rodriguez whispered. He was in one of the fire trucks, racing alongside the wreck. Eva was still fighting. With no rudder, no flaps, nothing. She hit the brakes. The brakes, with no hydraulics, should not have worked. But the emergency accumulators gave her one last, tiny burst of pressure. The nose of the plane veered. It was just enough. The wreck missed the fuel tankers by less than 10 feet. It finally slid to a stop in a cloud of smoke, steam, and fire-retardant foam. For a full 10 seconds, the base was silent. The only sounds were the rain and the hiss of the foam on the burning engine. The plane was a ruin. The cockpit was dark. "Get in there, get her out," a fire chief yelled. Sarge Rodriguez was the first one out of the truck. He ran, carrying a heavy axe, toward the cockpit. He didn't wait for the fire to be completely out. "Eva, Captain," he yelled, climbing onto the smoking fuselage. The canopy was supposed to open with an explosive charge. It had failed. She was trapped. Sarge raised his axe to smash the thick, armored glass. "No," a voice from inside yelled. "Passengers, the shock will kill him." It was her. She was alive. Sarge saw Eva's hand inside, pressing against the glass. She was trying to use the manual release crank. It was slow, too slow. The fire was spreading. "Sarge," she yelled, "the ammo bay, get them out first. The code is 1988. Sarge jumped down and ran to the side of the plane. He found the external panel for the ammunition drum access. He punched in the code. A small hatch opened. Inside, in the massive, dark space usually reserved for 30mm shells, were two men. One, the SF leader, was conscious, holding a pressure bandage to his leg. The other, a young soldier, was pale and unconscious. He's in bad shape," the SF leader, Hammer Actual, grunted. Medics swarmed the plane, pulling the two soldiers out. As they loaded them onto stretchers, the SF leader grabbed Sarge's arm. "The pilot, she's a god." Sarge ran back to the cockpit. The fire was getting close to the fuselage. "Eva, you have to get out." The canopy finally popped open with a hiss of air. It slowly lifted. And then she stood up. The crowd of pilots and crew, who had been held back, let out a collective gasp. Captain Eva Valkyrie Rostova stood in the cockpit of her ruined plane. Her flight suit was torn and black with soot. Her face was streaked with oil. A long gash was bleeding on her forehead. She did not climb out. She just stood there in the pouring rain, staring. She was not looking at the crowd. She was not looking at Sarge. She was looking directly at the command tower, at the small figure of Colonel Marcus Thorne, watching from the balcony. It was a look of pure, cold, and terrible judgment. Then her legs buckled. Sarge caught her as she fell, lifting her out of the cockpit and carrying her away from the fire. It's just my leg," she whispered. I think it's broken." "You're okay, Captain," Sarge said, his voice breaking. You're home, you're home." Colonel Thorne's face was ashen. He turned and ran from the balcony, pushing past his aides. Get my car now." He raced down to the flight line just as the ambulance was loading Eva onto a stretcher. He pushed through the medics. "Rostova," he yelled, his voice a mask of false concern. "What happened out there? What did you do to my aircraft?" Eva, lying on the stretcher, turned her head. The rain was washing the blood from her face. She looked at him. She said nothing. Hammer Actual, the SF team leader, was on the stretcher next to hers. He lifted his head. She saved us, you son of a... She saved us." "This is a military investigation, Captain," Thorne snapped at him. "You will be silent." "Sir," Sarge said, his voice low and dangerous. He was standing by the wreckage. You need to see this." "What is it, Master Sergeant?" Thorne said, annoyed. I was checking the fire damage near the hydraulic line, the one I told you was leaking." "And?" Sarge held up a small, metal-braided hose. "This, sir, this isn't battle damage, and it didn't burst from pressure." He showed it to Thorne. The end of the hose was clean, too clean. "It was cut, sir," Sarge said, his voice loud enough for the medics and fire chiefs to hear. Someone sawed this, about halfway through, so it would hold for a while, but fail under stress." A dead, heavy silence fell over the tarmac. The only sound was the rain. Everyone looked at the cut hose. Then they looked at Colonel Thorne. His face had gone from white to a sick shade of green. He knew, they all knew. That's absurd," Thorne stammered. "It must have been shrapnel a lucky shot." "No, sir," Sarge said, his eyes drilling into his commander. "It wasn't, it was sabotage." Eva, from her stretcher, finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the night. "He's right, Colonel," she said. Thorne looked at her, his eyes wide with panic. Eva lifted her hand. She was holding a small, black box about the size of a wallet. It was her personal flight recorder, a backup she kept in her vest. I wasn't sure, not until I felt the controls fail, Eva said, her voice growing stronger. But I remembered what you said, Colonel, right before I took off. You told your aide you'd be marking me off the roster. You said they'd never see me again. She held the black box up for him to see. You were almost right, sir, but you made one mistake. What are you talking about? Thorne whispered. You forgot, Eva said, that I record everything. The aftermath was swift. The moment Eva held up that recorder, the moment Sarge Rodriguez used the word sabotage, it was over. The circle of medics, firefighters, and security police on the tarmac was no longer a rescue scene. It was a crime scene. Colonel Thorne's panic was visible. He looked at the security police, then at the wreckage, then at Eva. He tried to bluster. This is insubordination. Captain, you are unstable. You are delusional from your crash. But his voice was shaking. No one was listening to him. Hammer Actual, the Special Forces captain, pushed himself up on one elbow from his stretcher. He's the one, men. He sent us in to die. He sent her to die. It was an illegal op. He was covering his tracks. That was the last piece. The OSI, the Office of Special Investigations, agents who were already on base took over. They quietly, firmly stepped in front of Colonel Thorne. Colonel, the lead agent said, his voice polite but cold. We need you to come with us. We have some questions. I am the commander of this base, Thorne roared. No, sir, the agent said. You're not anymore. They took him. He didn't go in handcuffs, not yet. But as they walked him to an unmarked car, every pilot, every crew chief, every airman on that flight line stared at him in silence. It was a walk of absolute shame. The base was locked down. The truth, as it always does, came out in pieces. It was worse than just sexism. Colonel Thorne, it turned out, was corrupt. He had been using his position to move illegal weapons, using classified Special Forces missions as cover. The team he sent in, Hammer Team, had been his team, but they had started to ask questions. They had found a weapons cache that didn't belong to any known enemy. Thorne panicked. He sent them on one last recon mission, and he leaked their location to the enemy. He was trying to have his own men eliminated. But he needed a scapegoat. He needed a failed rescue to cover the deaths. That's where Captain Eva Rostova came in. Eva had, weeks earlier, filed a simple fuel report. She had noted that a cargo plane under Thorne's command had logged a flight. But the fuel it had supposedly taken on didn't match the flight plan. It was a tiny thing. A bookkeeping error, she thought. But to Thorne, it was a loose thread. He saw her report. He knew she was smart, by the book, and worst of all, an outcast. No one would believe her. She was the perfect person to take the fall. He hadn't just hoped she would fail. He ensured it. The cut hydraulic line wasn't meant to kill her on takeoff. It was designed to make her plane fail under the stress of combat, deep in enemy territory. She would crash. The plane, the flight recorder, and the problem of Eva Rostova would all be buried under a mountain of rock and fire. He never, not in a million years, thought she could fly that plane back. He never thought she would be strong enough to survive the crash, or crazy enough to load survivors into an ammo bay and take off again. He had underestimated the woman he was trying to destroy. Eva spent 3 days in the hospital. She had a broken leg, 2 cracked ribs, and severe smoke inhalation. But she was alive. Sarge Rodriguez sat by her bed the whole time. He didn't say much. He just brought her coffee and an old flight magazine. On the 4th day, 2 men in dark suits came to her room. They were from the Pentagon. They debriefed her. She told them everything. She gave them her backup recorder. When they were done, the older of the 2 men, a general, stood up. Captain Rostova, he said, what you did, flying into that canyon, saving those men, it was the finest act of airmanship I have seen in my career. I was just doing my job, sir, Eva whispered. No, Captain, the general said. You were doing the impossible. Colonel Thorne is facing a court-martial. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. The men he worked with, they are also being rooted out. He paused. The Air Force. We failed you, Captain. We allowed a man like that to command. We are sorry. Eva just nodded. A week later, she was out of the hospital on crutches. The first place she went was the hangar. Her plane, Old Bess, was there, or what was left of it. It was a mangled, scorched piece of metal. It would never fly again. It was, as Thorne had predicted, a write-off. Sarge was there, quietly salvaging what parts he could. She was a good plane, Eva said, touching the bent fuselage. The best, Sarge said. She held together when she shouldn't have. She brought you home. As they stood there, a group of men walked into the hangar. It was Hammer team, all of them. The one who had been critically wounded was in a wheelchair, but he was smiling. They all stood in front of Eva. Their leader, Hammer Actual, stepped forward. He was on crutches, just like her. "Captain," he said. He didn't salute, he just looked her in the eye. "We were told no one was coming. We were told it was a suicide mission, and then we heard your voice." He reached up and tore the patch from his uniform. It was their unit's insignia. He held it out to her. "You're one of us now, ma'am. The men, we call you the Angel of the Canyon. We just wanted to say thank you." Eva felt her eyes water. For the first time, she let the tears come. She took the patch. "Thank you, Captain." "No," he said, "thank you." The story of what she did spread. The pilots who had mocked her, the ones who had stayed silent. They didn't know what to say. They would see her in the hall on her crutches, and they would just nod. It was a new kind of respect, deeper than friendship. It was awe. Lieutenant Chaser Jensen, the pilot who had let her take the fall, was transferred. He was sent to a desk job in Alaska. He would never fly a combat mission again. 2 months later, Eva's leg was healed. She was cleared for flight. She walked onto the flight line. The sun was rising, painting the desert sky. Sarge was waiting for her. "Your new ride is ready, Captain," he smiled. It was a brand new A-10. The paint was pristine. The engines were powerful. It was the best plane on the base. Eva walked up to it. She ran her hand along the fuselage. It was perfect. She looked at the nose. The ground crew had been busy. They had painted a new piece of art on it. It was a beautiful, fierce Valkyrie, rising from a cloud of fire, and underneath it 2 words. "Never again." Eva Rostova smiled. It was a real smile this time. She climbed the ladder and settled into the cockpit. It felt like home. "Valkyrie 1-1, she said into the radio, requesting permission to taxi. "Valkyrie 1-1, the tower operator's new, friendly voice replied. "You are cleared for takeoff. The sky is yours, Captain." She pushed the throttles forward. The engines roared, a perfect, healthy sound. The Warthog raced down the runway and climbed, fast and strong, into the bright blue Arizona sky. She was the pilot they tried to erase, the woman they sent to die, but in the flames of betrayal she had found her glory. And this time, everyone on the ground and everyone in the sky knew her name.